Let me say a little bit about Hannigan Motorsports as a company, because sometimes people want to know, if I buy a Hannigan trike, am I dealing with a stable company, or what's the history of this outfit anyway? Is it, if they're just a year old, are they going to be gone in another year? The company is located in Murray, Kentucky. Wes has been there. Anthony, your service manager, spent time with us. Any of you would be welcome to come check out what we've got there. It's a privately owned company. The owners are David and Ruth Ann Hannigan. Dave started the company 40 years ago up in Canada at that time, just outside of Toronto. He worked from there for 18 years and then realized the big motorcycle market is stateside. He moved down to Murray, Kentucky. Chose that location fairly intentionally. He wanted to be east of the Mississippi because that's where the big population and the riders are. He wanted to be equally accessible to the southern states and the Great Lakes states. He figured that put him somewhere in Kentucky or Tennessee, and we've ended up in a location that is 3 miles north of the Tennessee line in Kentucky. As a matter of fact, I live in a little town called Hazel, and I tell people the town I live in is so big it takes 2 states to hold it all, because the Kentucky-Tennessee line runs right through our little town of 500 people. If I walk my dog down to the next block, I'm in Tennessee. Anyway, Dave and Ruth Ann Hanigan are the owners. They've been manufacturing world-class motorcycle products for 40 years. As I mentioned before, we're going to have a big celebration in June. The company is stable. It's a debt-free company, which I think puts it in a fairly small minority of companies. And we're serious about standing behind our stuff if there is a problem. Our warranty is 2 years, unlimited mileage on all of our products. And from the feedback that we have got from multi-line trike dealers, we are confident to say that we have the lowest warranty ratio in the industry. If we have good installers, like we do here, we have very few comebacks once people get out there. I put in a little note here about rider training and demo rides. When I say rider training, the reason I put that in there is because sometimes people who want to do a demo ride have never ridden a trike before. Perhaps some of you have never ridden a trike before. In this little booklet that comes with each kit, there is a section on trike riding instructions. If somebody has, if you're not confident that somebody has ridden a trike before, please don't just set them on it and say, there you go. Take at least a few minutes to tell them what to expect, okay? You do allow demo rides here, right? That's my understanding, and I compliment you for that, because demo rides sell trikes. Specifically, demo rides sell Hanigan trikes. When we go to the Wingding, all of the major trike manufacturers are there providing rides, and time and again, I'll have people get out and say, "Wow, that's the best ride. That's the best riding trike." I love the way that handles. So you want to get them out and riding them. Obviously, we want people to be safe when they go out. So the reason I'm pointing this here is in case you might forget one of these points, you can go back and review it right in the book. 1, put your feet up and keep them up. Now, if you've got the big boards, it's almost impossible, unless you're really tall, to put your foot down while you're still moving. But I can still remember my first trike ride, which was a long time ago, and the big floorboards had not been invented yet. And nobody mentioned to me that it would be a good idea to keep my feet up. And so I can't remember if it was when I was taking off, I was too slow to lift it, or when I was coming to a stop, I put it down too soon. But I ran the fender up on the back of my leg, and it hurt. And I only did it one time. So put your feet up and leave them up. And it could result in serious injury if somebody put their foot down while they were still moving. The next thing you want to remind them before they head out is that they're wider. on a Goldwing, an extra 14 inches on each side with a Hannigan trike. This wasn't a trike that we sold, but I know of a guy who, with his brand new trike, pulled up for his first gas fill, and it was one of those places that had a high concrete island under the pumps, and he forgot to allow for that, and wham. And even if you stop to talk to a pedestrian, and the guy's standing there beside you, make sure that he steps back before you pull away. You don't want to be clipping pedestrians or having your riders do that. The biggest difference between a trike and a two-wheeler is steering. And counter steering and body lean no longer turn the machine. It's only going to turn one way. You take those handlebars and point that front wheel where you want to go. A few years back, I was up at the some of you will recognize the name of this dealership, Nihas Cycle, pretty big Honda dealer up in Litchfield, Illinois. And they do a thing they call Nihas Appreciation Days, and they were doing trike rides, and I was up there assisting them, and we had like 6 trikes, and we were taking people out in little groups, and I was leading them. And I went over to this one guy, I said, have you ridden a trike before? He says, no. And I said, well, let me just, tell you a couple things. He said, I've been riding motorcycles for 35 years. You can't tell me anything. So I couldn't tell him anything. We pull out onto the street. Everybody pulls out, turns to the right. This guy at the back of the line pulls out and goes to the left. He's trying to counter steer it. And then, of course, it's not working, so then he pushes further. And he does a tight little circle there in the middle of the street. And there's like 200 people standing there watching. And then, of course, he gets very embarrassed. Because he gets embarrassed, he gets very angry, and he gets off the thing, leaves it in the middle of the street. These stupid things won't steer. And he stalks off. And that night, when there was nobody else around, I found him, and I took him to a church parking lot and worked with him for like an hour. I never saw a guy who had so much trouble figuring out how to steer a trike, because it's not difficult. It's different, but it's not difficult. And it will feel a little bit strange to somebody who's riding the first time. And so what I'll often say is, if you think back to the first time you rode a two-wheel motorcycle, how strange did that feel? This is not nearly as big a step as that was. And the other thing you can encourage people is that the first trike ride you take is probably the worst trike ride you'll ever take, because you don't have any muscle memory working in your favor. Everything is strained. If you ride again the next day, it's amazing how much easier it is for the odd guy that might struggle a little bit. Anyway, so it's direct steering, push-pull technique. Push on the one bar, pull on the other. And it's quite all right on a 3-wheel motorcycle to use a straight arm. If I'm turning to the left, I'll actually straight arm it and just lean on it a little bit instead of going just like this. Because if you do just with your arms, it's real easy to do what the British call 50 pensing and chop little corners off of the turn. But if you just sort of put your body weight on it, you'll get this nice, smooth turn as it comes around. That's not a big deal, but it starts to come natural as you spend a little bit of time with it. Tell people that when they're turning, especially to the left, some people will, if they're riding with a high wrist position, when they start turning to the left, they'll accidentally roll on more throttle than they intended. So you might just caution them a little bit about that. As on any other machine, head up, look in the direction that you want to travel. Caution them that they could get a little bit of head shake. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but if you're riding a trike, you've now taken a 1-track vehicle, 2-wheel motorcycle, and made it into a 3-track vehicle. So you're going to hit bumps and irregularities in the road surface at different times with the different tires. And if you go over a railroad track, for example, specifically if it's at an angle, it'll put forces into the frame of the motorcycle that it never had to deal with before, and they'll work their way up to the handlebars, and you'll get a little bit of this. With our setup, you get very little of that, but they still may notice it. If you tell them, if it happens, don't worry about it. It'll immediately go away. It only happens at low speeds, up to about 20-25 miles an hour. It doesn't happen at higher speeds. People are okay with it, but if they aren't warned to expect it and they've never ridden a trike before, it may startle. On the other hand, if they've ridden somebody else's trike, particularly if they've ridden one with a solid axle like a Harley trike, they're going to say, wow, I didn't notice it at all on this. So that's a good deal. You should advise people to keep both hands on the handlebars all the time, but not a death grip. You know, just hold on, you're relaxed and normally. And if you're taking a passenger, the passenger should also be told what to expect. On a two-wheel motorcycle, when you go into a turn, it leans in. So all of the forces that you feel are linear. But when you go to a three-wheeler, it's going to stay flat through the turn, and you're going to get lateral forces that you never felt before. And sometimes the person on the back seat, the first time they're on a trike, they'll feel like they're going to fall off the outside of it. They won't. Nobody ever has. But the feeling might be there. So you can just sort of caution people that they might feel that when they go around a turn. It's like being in a car. When you corner in a car, you know, your body weight tends to make you, want to continue in a straight line. Same thing on a trike, but it's no big deal. Okay? Any questions about that? I want to encourage you as much as possible, if people are serious, to get them to ride. I found that demo rides are very, very effective in terms of helping people to make the decision that, yes, this is what I want to do. I can do this. It's fun. And help them to picture, what they can do with it. Help them to picture that ride, going places they want to go. Almost without exception, we find that when people put a Hanigan trike conversion on their Goldwing or buy one that's ready to go, their riding mileage increases. They spend more time on their bike. Instead of, maybe only taking it the odd time when they go on a trip, they'll start jumping on it to go to the grocery store. Just living with it more. And that's a good thing.